a short time frame. I know the September 30th deadline is coming up. We have about 2.5 months left before this deadline. So a lot of investors are realizing that they want to take advantage of this program and try to file by September 30th. So I'm going to give you a bunch of tips that can help you to effectively prepare your petition and be able to file it in about 3 weeks. So the key to success are going to be two things. It's going to be actually prepping your own documents so you can hand them to your immigration attorney in a very ready and easily digestible format that's going to enable the firm to be able to process your case in a couple of weeks rather than 2 week time frame, right? The most amount of work that law firms have to deal with is sorting and organizing documents that the clients present, right? Because clients tend to just send a bunch of documents to the immigration attorneys without realizing that there's going to be a paralegal or an attorney who's going to sort through hundreds and hundreds of pages with a case that's not familiar to them. So I'm going to talk about how to send documents to your immigration firm so you can avoid waiting for weeks and weeks for them to finish your case, right? And the second key to success is how to effectively go through projects because project selection can take months. If you're actually doing a good job reviewing projects and doing due diligence, reading the documents, understanding them, checking different facts about the project instead of just kind of throwing your money at the first project that has good marketing material, that process can take months. So, one of the best ways to eliminate a lot of that time is to work with a FINRA licensed and regulated financial professional who's also competent in EB-5. I, as a FINRA broker, we do due diligence for months. So at any given time, I have projects that are already pre-vetted. So projects that we have already spent months doing research on. We reviewed their agreements, we reviewed their, cash spending, their construction updates. I usually have already visited the project. So, when clients come and start working with me, we can have a project selected literally within just a few days because I can show them options that we have already pre-vetted and I can go through a lot of these options right away and compare them. Same with other brokers. If you're working with a licensed broker, they're going to show you a lot of options that have already been pre-vetted. Obviously, some brokers have more options, some have less, depending on their capabilities, expansion, and team. Um, I'm very proud of what my brokerage has been able to accomplish with our team because my vision was always to be able to provide clients options that are just not two or three projects. We usually have 12 to 15 projects that we can show at any given time to investors that have fully completed our due diligence process. So, I'll talk about how to work with brokers to save you time on preparing your petition in a quality way. So you never want to sacrifice your time and due diligence time on the project. So I'm going to kind of explain how to use brokers to help you with that. And then we're going to talk about how to work with your source of funds documents. So on the broker side, it's going to be kind of easier to explain. First, I want to explain what is a FINRA broker because there's a very common misconception out there that brokers that work with EB-5, they just point you in the direction of different projects. If you want a list of different regional centers, you can go on USAS website. If you want to pull up, the list of large regional centers, you can Google EB-5 projects and you're going to get a bunch of them. A truly professional broker, I understand not every broker is made the same. So some people may have had a less positive experience with brokers who maybe are a little bit less professional. But a good professional broker is not just going to spend 5 minutes doing your intake and then refer you to the regional center to speak to the representatives of the regional center. A professional broker is going to get to know you, understand your needs. They're going to ask you questions that are specific to you. And then they're going to present you EB-5 project options of the dozens of projects that are out there in the market. They will show you specifically the ones that they think meet your criteria, and you will be able to have calls with them to go in depth, project by project comparison. Why does this project, how does this project compare to the other one? Is it their timeline? Is it the capital that's in the project? Is it the specific terms? So a diligent broker will spend time with you and sort of they do all the heavy lifting and all the legwork, running around, researching, reading all these documents, and then they will digest and summarize it for you and kind of give you the information that you need. Think of it also as a doctor. A doctor has to learn so many different things about medicine and the body and anatomy and chemistry. But when you go to speak to a doctor, they're not talking to you for hundreds of hours, dumping all the possible information, and they pre-filter what is important to you based on your circumstances, and they use years of knowledge and give you what you need. So same with a good broker. A good broker will understand what you need, present you suitable options, and will actually go through every single option and do a comparison for you so you can understand what risks each one has and decide which one is more comfortable for you. Because every project is still going to have a normal business risk. We're talking about, developing a real business that needs to be finished and completed. Um, so um, that's kind of how to streamline your project selection timeline. I will tell you what doesn't help brokers. If you come to a broker, if you decide, oh, before I use a broker, let me do all my own research online, you're going to contact 20 regional centers, decide which 5 projects you like, and then you come to that broker with that list of 5 projects and say, can you do due diligence on this? That's not going to help you or the broker, because to do due diligence on a project, it takes months. And sometimes the options you may have found online are not great options. So even if they decided to do due diligence on them, they may come back and say this project hasn't passed our due diligence. So you're not going to be able to get this done in 3 weeks. So it is actually, when brokers work with clients, it is easier for the broker and streamlines the process a lot more if you start with the broker, because they're already giving you options. They review dozens of projects. They filter out what they don't think is going to have an advantage to their clients, and they will give you options that they have already completed due diligence on, so you can dive right into discussing those deals instead of sorting through everything that you found online. And also, sometimes if you are already working with a regional center uh, directly, sometimes depending on the regional center, right, most regional centers will still, if you want to be represented by a broker, they will add the broker to the transaction. But some regional centers are unable to. So if they've already started working with the client directly, they may not be able to include that broker in the transaction anymore, right? So it is much more helpful if you reach out to the FINRA licensed and regulated brokers in advance instead of trying to do your own research and then dumping that research onto the broker. That's not going to save anybody any time or create efficiency. So that would be my recommendation. Engage licensed, regulated, accountable professionals who also know the industry, who know these regional center projects, not someone who started working in this industry yesterday. So, interview your broker about their experience, how they do project selection, what makes them qualify, what degrees do they have? Are they, do they have a degree in economics or finance or law, that helps them analyze these transactions, because that's also kind of how you determine the quality of work or of your broker. Um, so that's first. To save time, I would recommend engaging a professional FINRA licensed broker to show you options that have passed FINRA mandated due diligence. Okay, and you can dive into those stronger options. Now, what can you do practically to help your petition? Because this is a complaint I'm hearing from almost every single one of my investor clients, right? My work with them goes quite quickly on the project selection. We only need a few hours to decide to discuss multiple pre-vetted options. And then the complaint that I hear with them is my law firm is so busy. I send them an email, it takes them more than a week to respond. I send them a follow-up, I send them documents. It takes them 3 weeks to get back to me and tell me what is wrong with those documents and what else they need. Guys, the reality is every single law firm that specializes in EB-5 right now is going through the same thing. They have to file dozens of cases in the next 3 months, and everyone is overwhelmed, and they're just trying to prioritize them based on kind of hard deadlines, like if someone's child is aging out. So what can you do to actually get your case completed and finished? So number one, when you're hiring your attorney, discuss specific timelines. If you are hiring your attorney today in July and you want to file by September 30th, expect that that's how long that work is going to take. However, if you're hiring them today with an anticipation and an expectation to file on August 15th, then you ask the firm, if I retain you today and if I provide you my documents, a week from now, will you be able to prepare and file the petition by August 15th? The attorneys will tell you what their capacity is, whether they can or they cannot. Hopefully, your attorney is good with actually setting the timelines and sticking to them. But first, when you're negotiating your retainer, negotiate a specific timeline by when the case has to be filed. Because then you will probably go into a pile of cases getting filed in August instead of a pile of cases that are getting filed in September. Number two, you need to make the document submission very clear for your attorneys. If your attorney says, hey, send me your tax returns, send me a description of your source of funds, send me your bank statements, and send me, your company records, and you take an email and attach dozens of files that include all of this and send out an email saying, guys, I've attached everything. Guess how long it's going to take them to work on your documents? Weeks, because a paralegal has to go into open each PDF file, try to read it and say, okay, this is a bank statement, rename it. Chase bank statement for March, Chase bank statement for April, and then try to understand why that bank statement is even there. What is this bank statement proving? Is this bank statement showing a gift you received from your parents? Is this bank statement showing a deposit of your salary? What is the purpose of the statement? So if you just send them documents not labeled with what the name of the document is, what the date range that this document covered, and not sending an explanation with the purpose, you are assuring yourself that your case is going to take forever. And at that point, frankly, it's not even fair to be upset with your attorneys because you are the only one who actually knows what is in those documents and why you're sending them there. So you do want to get a checklist, but it all starts with very clearly outlining your story. We call it a narrative. So I was a practicing attorney for 10 years, specialized in EB-5 cases. We filed hundreds of them. Every case started with a client providing us what we call a narrative. And we would ask the client to write out, could be in an email form, doesn't have to be formal, write out how you made your money, right? And an example would be something like this. I have been working as a software engineer at such and such company from 2000, 15 to my present time. My initial salary was 100,000. Now my salary is 350,000. I have, about 500,000 of the money I plan to invest comes from my savings. My work savings that I received from this company between 2015 and 26, I saved a portion of it and I invested it in stocks. I held my stocks in a Fidelity account or Morgan Stanley account, and I kept contributing to that account from my salary. Right now, I'm liquidating some of these stocks, and 500,000 is going to come from initially my salary, which was used to buy stock and now was liquidated. Another 100,000 comes from the company options. I had options that were vested and I sold them this year, so that's going to account for 100,000, and that is in such and such bank, and it was deposited on such and such date, and I transferred it to my checking account on such and such date. And the remaining 200,000 is coming from a gift from my parents, say in India. They're selling land. This land was purchased by my grandfather in 1982 for this amount. It was sold, it was transferred to my parents in 2023, and it was sold by my parents for this amount in 2026. And they're transferring it from such and such bank to such and such bank. If you provide the storyline with the names of the banks, the names of the organizations, the months, the dates, and the amounts, and you write everything out, and honestly, if you really want your case to move forward, when you write out the narrative, as you're writing the pieces of information, you say, see exhibit this. So for example, I have been gainfully employed as a software engineer in this company from such and such year to such and such year. See exhibit one. And exhibit one could be your folders with your tax returns. See exhibit one for tax returns, pay stub records, employer letter, right? So everything is there. The money that my parents sold from India, see exhibit two, and then every document should be labeled purchase contract for the land and what's the year, and preferably the amount. Purchase 50,000, 1982. Sale contract for the land, 2026, 400,000. Currency conversion from this to that, which bank account. So if you write out a narrative and can reference in your narrative the exact documents that support every sentence that you're saying, they purchased this land on such and such year, see document such and such for purchase and sale contract. They transferred the land to my parents, see such and such document of transfer confirming transfer in 2023 to my parents. My parents sold the land in 2026, see purchase sale agreement, transfer documents from purchaser to my parents, conversion documents, currency conversion, and then wire from India to my Chase account, and the gift letter. So a gift letter from your parents is probably something that your attorneys can help you prepare. But as you're not just giving them a narrative, but actually specifically point to which document supports each sentence of your narrative, you just saved dozens of hours to a paralegal. Because if you just write a narrative, don't get me wrong, it's helpful, but if you just wrote the story and send all these documents in one big file, the paralegal still has to go through and say, okay, so we see salary. What shows salary? Okay, this is a tax return. This is a purchase sale of land. This is some Indian document. This is some transfer. Where do I find what supports that they were working? Oh, payroll records at the very end of the folder. So write the narrative and cite to each sentence and specifically point out which document you uploaded that supports each date, fact, and the amount. If you really want to help your attorneys, because at this point we are talking about doing a lot of the work that the paralegals do, but frankly, you are in the best position to do it, right? So if you want your case to be done in 3 weeks, you have to do this. Otherwise, there's no law firm right now that can accommodate your EB-5 case in 3 weeks, right? If you just data dump on them. If you really want to help them, also create a flow chart. So in the case that I just described, we have 500,000 from salary. So you would do like a flow chart, 500,000 salary from work, transferred, to brokerage account, purchased stock, transferred to sold stock, transferred to Chase checking account. And then, 100,000 options that are vested, sold in 26, transferred to Chase checking on such and such date. And then another separate chart, land purchased in India by grandparents, transferred to grandparents, sold by parents, money transferred to an Indian bank account, money, 400,000 from a sale transferred to an Indian bank account, 200 gifted to me and transferred from India to my Chase account. So if you write out a flow chart, Also, that's super helpful to the USAS officer and to your paralegals, right? And that's one of the ways that you can really influence your petition. Write out the narrative, collect the supporting documents that show every piece of the story, clearly label every single document, with not just, okay, bank statement. That's not helpful, right? Which bank? Fidelity Bank, the timeline for the which period this bank statement covers, September 2025, and ideally include what it supports. So incoming wire 100,000, or incoming gift, or incoming sale of stock. So clearly label all these documents, um, and that's going to definitely help your attorneys. And so narrative, clearly label documents, cite to your documents in the narrative, and a flowchart. And that's how you are going to save dozens of hours. Also, when you're hiring the attorney, clearly communicate the dates and see if they are able to accommodate those dates. Some attorneys will clearly tell you yes, some will clearly tell you no. Some will offer a rush fee, right? Some of these attorneys have additional resources, such as outsourced paralegals and outsourced services that they can use and pay extra for to get your work done quicker. So ask them if the timeline can be shortened for a rush fee. Maybe you're paying 2,500 extra dollars, which enables them to hire an additional paralegal to streamline and sort of fast track the preparation of your petition. Um, yeah, I mean, you can, because you know your story and you know your documents, you can use AI to help you with this, right? You can load your kind of bank documents, your statements, and ask AI to scan and organize and maybe help improve your narrative. But make sure the only person who really knows what happens with your money is you. So make sure you read what the summary that AI prepared with dates and citations, and actually verify that it's correct before you're submitting it to your attorneys. The last thing you want to do is submit something that is not accurate, because A, they may not catch that mistake. They were relying on you to provide them accurate information. And B, it's just humanly much more difficult for someone who is completely unfamiliar with your story to catch that mistake. Last but not least, your forms that the law firm will fill out. The I-526E form, the I-485 form. So for the I-526E form, really go through your work history and compared it to what was listed in your prior non-immigrant petitions. So if you had an H-1B before, if you had an E-2, if you had a student visa, especially if you had a student visa or a tourist visa before, try to remember what you were listing there as your work. Because I see this a lot. Sometimes entrepreneurs have multiple companies that they're involved with, but they only list one on their student visa petition or their tourist petition. And 5 years later, in their source of funds, they're actually listing another company that the money came from, but it wasn't previously listed in your prior visa petitions. So make sure it, it makes sense. So if you fail to list something in your prior student petition because it wasn't your primary job at the time, you want to make sure you list all the different positions you were occupying in all the different years, so there are no inconsistencies. Right. So when you are providing information for your forms, please make sure it's accurate. Your law firm and your paralegals, although it's easy to think, hey, I'm paying them, let them go through and check for the mistakes. That's the last thing you want for your case. They are overwhelmed. They're handling so much data and so many numbers that asking them to catch mistakes in a fact pattern that you are most familiar with is just counterproductive, right? And they're human, they may not catch them. So you want to double check that the information you're providing is accurate. And when you're sent your forms, your immigration forms, to fill them out, I cannot tell you how important it is for you to comb through it. Please actually review your immigration forms. I know you want to think that, hey, the paralegals are professionals, they're going to make sure there are no mistakes. But the reality is, when you're typing in dozens of different numbers, dates of birth for you, for your children, for your spouse, for someone else's children, these are just numbers. They mean nothing, right? So for a person, it's very easy to make a mistake or a typo and switch 1 5 and put 5 1 and then not notice that they did it. When you're reading your own form, you are so familiar with your date of birth that if somebody makes a mistake, it's super easy for you to catch it. So review your forms, review the addresses, make sure everything really aligns after the law firm sends it to you. And that's going to help streamline and make sure there are no errors. So those are the main tips that I can give you guys on how to help and get your case done in 3 weeks. 3 weeks is just something that I'm using that I think is doable, extremely, extremely quick, but it's doable, right? I have worked on many EB-5 deadlines as an attorney. We used to file over 100 cases, and sometimes we were filing 60 of those cases in the last 2 months before the deadline, right? So we've created all sorts of procedures internally to help us take care of that. And the fastest case I have ever done in my life, you know, from a law firm perspective, was 10 days. 10 days from the moment we sat down for the initial consultation until the petition was actually put in the package and went out. I don't think it's practically possible for most people, right? We pulled some serious miracles in that particular case, and that particular case also was not in a deadline. So that week we only focused on one case. The whole office was working on one person's petition because they were falling out of status. It was like an emergency. But 10 days, I was already a broker then too, so I reviewed different project options with him. We picked a project. I helped his legal team to go through the documents. We prepared a petition. Actually, it was approved quite quickly. I don't think they even got an RFE. 10 days is my personal record that I don't think is realistic, but we have done a number of cases in the 3 week timeline turnaround. But I had to provide these specific instructions to my clients. If you want to get this done, this is what we will need from you, and we will need it within the first essentially couple of days. A full narrative with an explanation, with labeled documents, and with cross citations, which document goes to which part of the narrative, so that our team is just double checking and making sure it legally qualifies, right? It's meeting all the EB-5 standards versus fact checking your documents. So, narrative, clear dates and timelines, labeled and organized documents that are cross referenced in the narrative, ideally also a chart. And on the project side, if you can work with a broker, a professional broker, that is going to really save you a tremendous amount of time, so you can actually not throw, a dart in the wall and guess which project to go to, but make sure you're going into a pre-vetted project that passed independent due diligence and that is also suitable for your needs, right? And a broker also, as some projects now are getting filled up, brokers will also take on getting you a spot in the project. Also very important, because some people are going to start missing out on spots in September on projects that are getting filled up. And a broker will help you sign the subscription documents, make sure, the project received them, make sure that the subscription account is open for your wire. So these are important tasks that brokers know how to do. And so when you engage a professional to assist you with that, it can definitely, definitely help streamline and help you with a better quality application. So hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Good luck. I think I'll be sharing this video with a lot of clients who are coming in August and September to help them prepare a quality case for their immigration attorneys so that everyone is a little bit less stressed out and has a better experience. But I look forward to helping you guys through this deadline. Take care.